Hi, this is Dave Hurwitz at ClassicsToday.com, here with a few personal thoughts on a question that was posed, at least implicitly, by one of the commentators on my YouTube channel. The commentator was very kind and mentioned that she particularly enjoyed my kneecapping, I think was the expression she used, of bad Bruckner recordings. And so I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about why there is so much bad Bruckner in the first place. And there's a lot of it. I think the first reason is because there's just so much Bruckner around. I mean, he seems to be becoming more popular. People are conducting it more frequently than ever, which means that the average quality level is likely to trend toward the median or go down. When Bruckner was a specialty composer of just a few very, very dedicated, cranky old German conductors, the standard was higher, or at least more consistent, because we knew the types of interpretations to expect, and we knew the reputations of the people who were giving them. Now, when everybody wants to do it, the chances of getting some fairly stupid people playing Bruckner are much higher, and that's part of what we're seeing. The other reason that stupid people like Bruckner, conductors, especially lazy conductors, is that his music is very rhythmically simple, and you don't really have to worry about transitions structurally. So in that sense, he's easy. He's easy from a technical point of view, from a time-beating point of view. He's not easy to play well by any means, either for the orchestra or for the conductor as an interpreter. But from a technical conducting point of view, you can get out there and just slog away in 4/4 or cut time or 3/4, and you're basically set. That's all you're going to find. Orchestras also have a conflicted attitude towards Bruckner. I mean, I remember when I was playing in community orchestras here in New York, the fastest way to get rid of your string section was to announce that you were going to do Bruckner. The brass, they would show up for every rehearsal. They wanted extra rehearsals. They were having the time of their lives. But the strings were absolutely apoplectic about the way that Bruckner wrote. And I have many, many personal stories, some of them very amusing, about Bruckner's string parts. But you know that he likes tremolos, acres and acres of tremolos, which are tiring to play. And if the symphony lasts an hour and 15 minutes, it's really tiring to play. I mean, the first movement of the Sixth Symphony has three types of ostinatos. There's the opening one, the yump ta 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 thing, and then there's slow triplets and fast triplets. The entire 16-minute first movement has one of those somewhere going on, mostly in the string parts, at one time or another. There are only, I think, two 10-bar passages as part of the third subject, played by the brass, which is in unison. So it doesn't have one of those ostinatos. And of course, when Bruckner does give a tune to the strings, it's usually the lower strings, the cellos and violas. His song period themes are contrapuntal agglomerations of different parts. And so the violins very seldom get a chance to do the thing that they were built to do, which is sing a long cantabile melody. He has them, but the way he apportions them among the parts is frustrating. So that's another problem. And because of that, there are real Bruckner orchestras, usually the German orchestras, the Vienna Philharmonic, for example, the Staatskapelle Dresden, orchestras that have the tradition and the players know where they are in the music and they understand why what they're doing matters. I mean, there are many ways you can play a tremolo, and you can make it sound interesting. You can fill it full of atmosphere and color and intensity, or you can be a lazy slob about it. And there are a lot of orchestras who play tremolos very sloppily, and it's up to the conductor to see that they don't. And some conductors do it, and most conductors do not. So that's the other reason I think that there's a lot of bad Bruckner out there. And then the last reason I think is formal. It has to do with the way Bruckner handles form. As you know, Bruckner is chunky. He writes in sound blocks, which may or may not have transitions between them. Often they don't. It's almost a modern technique. I mean, the composer he most closely resembles structurally is Olivier Messiaen, or one of those composers who just uses a sort of thematic assemblage or motivic assemblage, and then stops and then plays another one, then goes back to the other one and arranges them like building blocks. That's how Bruckner operates. It's a mistake to think that he's using sonata form in the traditional sense, even though he thought he was. And I think that what happens today, particularly, is that a lot of younger conductors have forgotten how to handle sonata form. They don't really understand, they don't feel it. They're not raised in the tradition in the way that the previous generations of conductors were. They play a lot more contemporary music, a lot of music based on different formal principles, and a lot of that's tonal, but that doesn't mean that it's tonal in the sonata sense of being tonal, of creating a dramatic narrative through modulation and conflict of key areas. Bruckner, because he writes in blocks, gets conducted in blocks. I mean, the fact that his music is discontinuous often doesn't mean that it's incoherent. Not at all. It's very carefully laid out. And the conductor's job is to try and find unity in all of the diverse materials that he presents. The older Bruckner conductors, some of them like Eugen Joachim or Furtwängler, they tried to impose a certain sonata narrative flow on the music by, changing tempo and creating transitions and smooth joins. Others, Karajan and other people like that, they don't bother. They just let the music, Gunter Von too is like that. They let the music speak for itself, and when it stops, and when it goes, but they still are extremely careful in finding ways to relate sections to each other and knit the movements together into an organic whole. But you don't have to do that. And if you don't understand how to do it, or don't think it's an issue, or don't even see the problem, the result is going to be really bad Bruckner. And the third thing that's really harming Bruckner, I think, is frankly, the authentic instrument movement, and particularly the idea that 19th century orchestral sonority was short in vibrato and that kind of sensual, warm, singing human sound, which we know for a fact isn't true. I mean, Nicholas Harnoncourt, who was alive at the time in the early 20th century when all of this was supposedly going on, said unilaterally that conductors used lots more vibrato then than they do now. I mean, the memoirs of the guys who played under Mahler said that whenever you had a cantabile melody, you had to use a lot more vibrato than they use today. So we know that this is nonsense. It's complete and total nonsense. It's the Roger Norringtons and other people trying to make themselves distinctive by doing something different and trying to claim some sort of scholarly support for their decisions. But it's all hokum and nonsense, and it really damages Bruckner. Because Bruckner, the reason his music sounds spiritual or transcendental, if you want to call it that, isn't because it's objectively or abstractly spiritual or transcendental. It's because we hear those qualities in contrast to others. And the other, in this case, is the lyrical, the human, the warm, the fallible, the kind of music that isn't space music or that isn't God music, the kind of music that speaks to us of ourselves, of human emotions and human expression. And it's that contrast that gives Bruckner his majesty and his spiritual intensity. But conductors today, especially those who are used to lots of contemporary music and things that are, doing things like using no vibrato or mean tone tuning or early music, whatever they're doing, it doesn't matter. They don't get it. They want to have a distinctive sound. They apply a formula to the orchestral sound, and that formula wreaks havoc with Bruckner's whole expressive vocabulary. So those are the reasons, some of the reasons anyway. There are others too. They have to do with editions and musicology and things like that. But basically, those are the reasons I think that we're hearing so much bad Bruckner. I kind of dread picking up, new Bruckner recordings nowadays because you really don't know what you're going to get, and everybody thinks that they can do it. It's like anybody else. It's like anything else. If you study it, if you know it, if you have empathy for it, you can do it. But the number of people who really have that empathy and who really are able to realize a vision that complements the music and doesn't simply, serve as a vehicle for their own narcissistic need to show off, the number of those people is rather small. And so bad Bruckner is the name of the game for now. And let's hope things change. I don't think that they will, but it's all right. That's why I feel adequate. It's a good reason to have a critic on hand and to have careful listeners who know the music and who care about the music and who are often a much better judge of the music than the people who are actually playing it. Thank you.